here with Brandon Eaton, working the digital mortgage leads. How you doing, Brandon?
Not too bad. What about you?
Good, man. So kind of walk me through a lot of viewers, a lot of people that are starting with the leads. They start off in their first like month and like they don't really make a lot of money. They go through a lot of ups and downs. I know my first 3 to 4 weeks, like I didn't feel like I was getting a ton of callbacks with them. It's really my biggest thing. When I did answer, sometimes I wouldn't like. Sometimes I was a present, sometimes I wasn't. But generally, when I get back, I'd always like I said a ton of callbacks with these.
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through like your first couple months, I guess, working the leads and what that was like for you.
So I had originally started Strong Point back in October now, roughly.
Yeah.
So when I had first started, I think it was actually like the very first week. I don't remember. I don't know if you remember that guy that came to the office.
Yeah.
But it was like a $16,000 deal, right?
Right.
Like
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I ended up having like a really good week on paper.
Yeah.
But then stuff got declined. The big one didn't go through. I was like, oh, shoot. So that kind of hurt the heart a little bit. But
Yeah.
I worked them for about 8 months and, or not 8 months, 8 weeks, and racked up some credit card debt. Didn't go too good for me.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of presentations, but just didn't close very good. Like I think my close rate was around 20% over that time period.
Yep.
So kind of hard to be profitable when you're only closing 20%. But yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember. I forgot about this. You just brought it up. That $16,000 sale, right? That's like one. I feel like that little like fishing pole commercial where he's like, "You almost had it," a little dollar bill, right? Like that's what that $16,000, like monster, right? They got a lot of it got declined, right? So, which I think is really big because that like right at the beginning you're getting hit with some like friction in the business, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times when people like they have stuff like that goes wrong and they can't push through it.
Yeah.
Right. So the ones that can push through it are now you're crushing it. You're getting some success. Kind of talk about that transition from because you worked there for a couple months, didn't have a ton of success with digital mortgage leads, and then took some time off working some other leads, and then recently came back and started really having some good success. What was the reason kind of you went back from, the traditional mailers to now doing a digital mortgage lead?
The main reason why I switched is I was tired of doing $1,600 in a week just to get 5 presentations. So
Yep.
I mean, it was pretty simple for me.
Yeah.
Once I knew that I had the skill to close and got better at it, that it only made sense to go back to a lead that to where I can get more presentations in a week.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of like honed your skill with those few months, started having a little bit of traction, making some money, and then, obviously wanted to buy some of that time back with a more qualified lead now that your skill level had improved a little bit more. Kind of talk about your success with them now. Like what have you done differently? How's your mindset shifted to start having some success?
Mindset is like before, after running something for 8 weeks and it not working out, I was hesitant, not going to lie. But I knew looking back at the numbers from my last 3 or 4 months that I was closing over 50% of the people that I had sat with.
Yeah.
So I knew I was like, well, there's no reason why I can't do it with this. So I just need to take the leap and go back to it. And then first weekend I had, my biggest week, with the first week back on Strong Point. So it was like, oh, kind of a no-brainer. Get more presentations, close more people, make more money.
Yeah. How was your presentation and like kind of your thought process working the actual lead? How has that kind of evolved and changed from the first, 8 weeks to now like your first couple weeks back with working them and having success with them?
So everybody filled out the lead for a reason.
Mm.
So you pretty much just have to figure out why they filled it out. So
Okay.
they might give you a whole bunch of stuff up front, and it's kind of hard to see past that sometimes, but you just have to figure out simply why they filled out the form.
Yeah, love it. What kind of questions do you kind of ask to try to like figure that out?
Like in the beginning, or what do you
Yeah,
mean?
right in the beginning, like when you get them on the phone, you're trying to discover that why. What are some of the questions that you kind of like will dig and ask to pull that out?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty simple, but it's like, how long have you been looking into the coverage?
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's do a role play real quick. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been looking into, I just started looking into it.
Okay, cool. And did something happen recently, or what had you interested?
Yeah, friend of the family had passed away, and they were, their kids, they didn't have any kind of coverage like this, and they're struggling to make that payment. So, wife and I were talking and wanted to make sure if something like that happened that we'd be okay.
Oh my gosh! And how long ago did that happen?
It's probably about 2 months ago now.
2 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And have you been having to help their family like financially and everything like that? Or
Yeah, we've given a couple, like they had a GoFundMe and we helped them out with some money there.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you've seen firsthand exactly what this looks like with no coverage in
Yeah,
place.
unfortunately, yeah.
Okay. And so I assume that's why we're on the call then. You just want to make sure your family doesn't have to go
Yeah,
through that.
exactly.
Okay. Well, cool, cool. Well, here's what we're going to do, Mike. It's really based on a couple different things. It's going to be your age and your health.
Hmm.
So just going to take a look at a couple things here to see what you can get approved for and how much coverage you would need, okay?
Love it. So what if they give you like kind of generic answers? Well, just looking around, just kind of like shopping around, seeing what this is all about, like kind of like the tire kicker type people.
Yeah, so I try not to like dig too hard on it on the beginning because it is the beginning of the call.
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt like I get a lot of resistance, like if I try to just dive in too deep. But it's good to ask those questions right off the bat because exactly like what you did, you just told me everything there was. And
Yeah.
if they tell you, then you can pry into it. For me personally, that's what I do. But if they don't give me a lot right off the bat, then I don't have enough to stand on to dig more.
Yeah. Love it. Um, what do you do with people who are like right from the get go? They're just like, hey, Brandon, I just how much is it?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I mean, what were you even looking for?
Yeah, looking to cover the home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. And I guess how much do you owe? I don't even know how much you owe.
About 150,000.
Okay. Okay. And are you pretty healthy, Mike?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay, cool. Well, they're not going to take my word for it. Got to ask you a couple quick questions just to figure out what that looks like. That way we know we can get you the best price with the best carrier here.
Love it. So you just kind of diffuse it with, what are we even looking for? Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
like
Love
just
it.
be kind of confused. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
honestly, like we have no idea what they're looking for
Yeah.
and what they need. So
Yeah.
if you can kind of make them realize that, like, hey, like it's not a one size fits all. So
Yeah.
it's different for everybody.
Yeah. No, that's good. A lot of times when I would get that one too, I just, they're like, I want price. I'm like, oh, I just repeat it back to them. Oh, you want price?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's my job. I'm gonna go through and ask you a couple of minutes of questions here so that we can get you the price. Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of give them a little bit of control by like, oh, you want price? Yeah, I'll give you price. Let me go through my process.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of going about it that gives them feels like they're still like they have a little bit of control there. But I keep the control because I'm still have to go through my process.
Mm-hmm.
If I get it again, I'll be like, hey, look, these are just the questions the insurance company requires me to ask. I just got to go through this process so I can help you out.
Right.
Just kind of help diffuse it a little bit. So good. What is there any age range that you kind of struggled with at first that now you're kind of like seeing some better success with, whether it was younger or older clients?
Personally, I feel like most of the time, it's pretty rare that I find somebody underneath 50
Yeah.
that's filling out a mortgage protection form with Strong Point at least.
Yeah.
So honestly, I feel like everybody's mostly in the same boat. And the only thing that's a little bit different is whether or not somebody's retired or not, and just being on a fixed income in general.
Yeah. I think the reason probably for that, right, is they're getting up in age, right? And now they're starting to think that, so our average clients with Strong Point are like 50 to 80, I feel like.
Right.
So I think for those new agents that are watching this, right, it's like it's important to understand the client situation. The main reason they're filling it out a lot of times too is they're older. They're old. They're starting to get older. They're going for their colonoscopies. They're going for all like,
Yeah.
all the normal stuff they know. Like they've seen a lot of their friends now have stuff and passed away, right? So they're in that like frame of mind now. They're like, okay, now that I'm getting older, I need to make sure something's in place to protect my family.
Right.
So that's just where the majority of the clients that we're going to sit with, they're going to have a little bit of tension when you first get on the phone. So you got to like really start to work with them. Talk about kind of how you break clients down a little bit. Like, do you build any rapport with them, or is that kind of like through your process?
Yeah, I mean, it's through my process when I can. Like, I'm bad at like trying to force rapport.
Sure.
If there's something that I can connect with, like I'll try.
Okay.
Like if they tell me, oh yeah, so I ask like, what do you do for work? I'm like, oh well, I'm an electrician. I'm like, oh cool. And how long have you been doing that? And they tell me, I'm like, well, cool. So actually, before I was doing this, I was an electrician for a little bit, so I know a little bit about that.
Nice.
Where they got you working at, and
Yeah.
just kind of, I don't know, talk
Finding
with
some
them a little bit
similarities
about
and common ground there,
Right,
right? Yeah,
right.
'cause I was like, with these leads too, like my struggle was like, how much rapport do I build? Like, and I would kind of go back and forth because sometimes I would get really friendly with them, and then at the end, like when I had to ask them, like by the end they'd be like, hey, Mike, yeah, we'll leave like best friends, but I wouldn't protect them,
Right.
So I always heard like with sales, people buy from people they trust and they like. So I feel like I have to kind of like accomplish those two things with these leads. I got to get them somewhat like me because that's where the trust comes in, right?
Yeah.
If you're getting them laughing and getting them to like know that you're a real human being and you've asked some of those personal questions and shown some empathy, I think that helps you better understand the client, and they feel understood and they were solving a problem with the coverage.
Yeah.
So I think unless that happens kind of throughout it, I think it's tough when we get to the end. Then it's like we haven't built that trust. We haven't like, because if you work at like a regular mailer, right, like with that same like structure tonality, sometimes it's a little bit tougher at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you do at the end if they kind of like want to think about it? Is there anything you do to try to get them to close?
If they say that they want to think about it, I mean, yeah, Mike, and when you say you got to think about it, is it more so, about whether or not you want the coverage at all? Or is it more so just about which option to pick?
Really, which option?
Cool. Yeah, so Mike, what we do in that situation, we'll go ahead and get you started with that silver package there. And then, later on down the road, when you do get approved for the policy, whether that's a day from now, a week from now, or a year from now, we can bump you up to that gold or that platinum whenever that's more comfortable for you.
Love it. Okay. Any other tidbits for someone who's maybe brand new working the lead? Any like thing that you would tell them, like getting started, like what to focus on or what to do with kind of working the lead and having success early on?
For me, my close rate was horrible in the beginning, and I had to take a step back and figure out, okay, why would somebody not want this? Because for me, it makes perfect sense. But if you don't know why they want it or why they want to do something, then there's really no point in even showing price. For me, I always got caught up in what they said that they wanted to do versus why they wanted to do it. So that was a big thing for me. I'd ask them just a simple question. They'd be like, "Oh, well, I want to pay off the home." And I used to just take that and run.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask and figure out why. Like, why is that important that you want to pay off the home? Because you already said that your kids can't afford it when you pass away. So, I mean, really, Mike, that's an interesting perspective that you think that way, because most people don't really care about what happens to the home when they pass, especially if they know that the kids can afford it. Yeah. So why is that so important to you?
Good. Yeah, I think that helps by having that little word track there. I think it's important because at the end, a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I want to talk to my kids." So you're already figuring out the why. You don't want to leave them behind with a mortgage payment, right? So that's really key.
Yeah, so. And I've been really big on making them double down on things, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because it could bite me if I don't set it up properly. And sometimes I still struggle with that. But I know for a fact if I can get them to double down on something, it is way easier to close them.
Love it. Guys, hopefully you took a lot of value away from that. I think my biggest takeaway from today, right, is finding the why. Don't show price till you find the why. You just said it a minute ago, right? When you're working these leads, if you don't dig deep enough to figure out why they filled the form out, it's hard for us to solve a problem for the client. They don't feel heard. They don't feel like we really resolved their issue. So dig deep, ask all those questions at the beginning to try to figure out that why. Any other parting shouts for anyone working a digital lead?
Just keep dialing them like it's a mailer. For me personally, when I started, I bought a lot of Age Strong Point as well. And so I'll just start at the top of the list and just go down. Don't just think just because you're buying a high intent lead that you don't have to dial as much. You still have to do several $100 a day to get the presentations that you need. Love it. Appreciate you jumping on, man. I know that people take a lot of value from this, so yeah, keep crushing it. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Yeah. Crushed it. Cool. Let's go.